Well, the Christian nationalists have finally done it. Public schools in Louisiana will now be required to display the Ten Commandments, despite the fact that that is blatantly unconstitutional. Gosh, what a fun timeline this is. Last year, I talked about the exact same bill that was introduced in Texas, a bill that would, again, require the Ten Commandments to be displayed in every public school classroom, blatantly unconstitutional. But luckily, Texas Democrats were able to step up and kill the bill. Despite them being in the minority, they do it by this tactic of basically just wasting time until the clock runs out and the bill can't be passed. And while it's great that the bill died in Texas, I did mention that evangelicals were doing that thing they do where they introduce the same blatantly unconstitutional legislation in every state they can, in the hopes that one of them will pass. And last month, Louisiana finally succeeded, meaning that starting in January, every classroom from kindergarten to college will have the Ten Commandments prominently placed on the wall. The legislation is kind of unintentionally funny because it says things like this. Recognizing the historical role of the Ten Commandments accords with our nation's history and faithfully reflects the understanding of the founders of our nation with respect to the necessity of civic morality to a functional self-government. History records that James Madison, the fourth president of the United States of America, stated that we have staked the whole future of our new nation upon the capacity of each of ourselves to govern ourselves according to the moral principles of the Ten Commandments. Little problem with that. James Madison never said that. The quote actually comes to us in part from this stupid hick, David Barton. He's an evangelical Christian nationalist who is hell-bent on turning America into a theocracy. He included a version of that quote in his book, The Myth of Separation, along with several other completely made-up quotes from the Founding Fathers that have since been scrubbed from new editions of the book. In that book, though, he attributed the quote to Madison, and he cited a source that turned out to admit the quote came from a 1958 calendar of spiritual mobilization. The quote got a lot of publicity back in the 90s when conservative shock jock and all-around piece of shit Rush Limbaugh said it on his shitty radio show. At which point, the editors of Madison's papers stepped in to report, "We did not find anything in our files remotely like the sentiment expressed in the extract. In addition, the idea is inconsistent with everything we know about Madison's views on religion and government, views which he expressed time and time again in public and in private." So yeah, the basis for Louisiana requiring schools to display a religious text that includes rules like don't lie is a lie, a blatant lie. Of course it is. It has to be, because like the editors of Madison's paper said, the Founding Fathers didn't hide their interest in separating religion from the state. Religious freedom is an incredibly important concept upon which this country was founded. Not only is it right there in the First Amendment, but it is also repeatedly stated in documents, in rulings, in letters. It's not a secret. You have to just lie if you are hoping to get a religious document installed in public schools. This isn't the first time a state has managed to pass a law requiring the Ten Commandments be displayed in public schools. That would be Kentucky, which passed a law like that in 1978. For many years prior to that, apparently, Kentucky public schools had displayed the Ten Commandments. It's unconstitutional. It wasn't a requirement. They just did it. But in 1978, they decided, you know what, let's just pass a law and force all of the schools to display the Ten Commandments. So they did. And what happened was parents sued. The lawsuit was dismissed by the lower courts, but eventually it made its way to the Supreme Court of the United States, which in 1980 ruled that, that was blatantly unconstitutional. They didn't even bother to hear oral arguments, which is pretty rare for the Supreme Court, because they didn't need to. It's obvious. It's unconstitutional. Go home. where you can read the 10 Commandments all you want. And so that's where the Louisiana law is going to go as well. Parents from a broad variety of faiths, as well as atheism, have already filed a lawsuit, which the Louisiana courts will probably rule against them. And so eventually it's going to end up at the U.S. Supreme Court, who will... Well, who knows? The Burger Court in 1980 was conservative, and the court today is batshit insane. They could honestly just rule that the Louisiana law is constitutional and finally just demolish that pesky wall separating church and state and make America into an official theocracy. They might do that. Meanwhile, other states are continuing to try to pass the same exact law. In Oklahoma, they have the legislation waiting, but the state superintendent decided he's not going to bother to wait for it to pass. He's just going to require every teacher in the state to keep a Bible in their classroom and teach from it. He didn't detail exactly what lessons should be taught, but if I were a teacher in Oklahoma, I would absolutely welcome the opportunity to tell students all about the contradictions, the ridiculous stories, the goofy laws. Like literally every day, I would carve out a fun 20-minute look how fucking stupid this shit is lesson. Maybe I'd pair it with readings from other religious texts to illustrate how everyone else also thinks their God is the one true God. And we could go over the odds that the religion that you believe in just because your parents believed in it is the one true religion. I would absolutely turn my classroom into a little atheist factory. I would welcome little Christian children in, and by the time June rolls around, some asshole atheist would be walking out. I'd also sponsor an after-school Satanism club. Why not? We'd listen to death metal, paint our nails black, burn shit, whatever, just fun Satan stuff. Anyway, so yeah, Oklahoma is also trying to pass that 10 Commandments law. Arizona, Utah, and South Carolina also have the exact same law waiting to be passed. So if you live in one of those states, first of all, I am so sorry. I am very sorry. Second of all, call your congressional representatives and curse at them. Yell at them very loudly. They deserve it. Third of all, have you considered the teaching profession? I've heard it can be quite rewarding. Not monetarily, of course, but in terms of encouraging children to challenge their parents' deeply held beliefs, could be fun. Just throwing it out there. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.